session where today I'm joined with Cathy White, who is the founder of CEW Communications. Cathy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Cathy, PR, I'm going to be grilling you, lots and lots of things about it. But first, it'd be great just to find out a bit about yourself and what inspired you to set up your business.
So the first thing to know is that I never planned on a career in PR. It was something that I kind of fell into. So I left university not too long after we'd had the recession, and I wanted to have a career in media, and getting into something like that suddenly became a thing that was probably not going to happen that easily. So I found myself doing a really awful internship in London, and a friend basically got in touch and said, I know of a PR agency that is looking for an intern. Now, the agency worked specifically within the tech sector, and she uttered the really crucial words, which was, "It pays."
Yay! Always a bonus!
So I went for it, and I knew nothing about technology, and I knew equally nothing about PR when I first started out in the PR world. But I loved it because I was part of what was a small business. It was a very small boutique PR agency. It was the satellite office for a San Francisco-based one, which was very exciting at the time. And I kind of just relished doing PR. And not just that, I was given a lot of responsibility very early on. So within 9 months, I was the acting managing director of the PR agency.
Incredible.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. It was kind of the best outcome for that situation at the time. Our former MD had left us and they were in the process of hiring. So I kind of had to step up, which for someone who was an account executive and who had never run a business before and was still learning the ropes of PR, it was a massive challenge, but an amazing one, because what it showed me was that I wanted to start my own business. I loved being my own boss. I loved talking and working with clients directly, and I loved working with a team. And everything on the operations side of things, I just loved it. So I carried on down the path of my career, but the goal officially became, I want my own business. So I worked for another PR agency, helped that team scale. Then I moved in-house in a very strategic way to make sure I got experience on the other side of PR.
Good idea.
Also built up my network, and 7 months ago I took the plunge.
Amazing. And how have the first 7 months been?
Terrifying and awesome. That's the only way I can describe it. I've spent the last 5.5 years working with startup founders, and one of the things that they always say is that the highs are really high and the lows are really low. And I never quite grasped that until I started on my own. But it is awesome. So I'm still a team of one, but rather excitingly now I'm hiring. So ready to kind of scale the team, working with some amazing freelancers as well, and got some great clients. So it's all very, very exciting, but it's probably been the steepest learning curve and the fastest one.
I can imagine. And so many exciting times ahead for you there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing. So why would you say it's so important for kind of new businesses or businesses looking to kind of grow and develop to get PR? What are the real benefits? Why should women out there be doing it?
So there's a few different benefits for PR. If you're able to do it on the cheap, so ideally just by yourself, then it is a very free way of getting publicity for you and for your business. But it's also equally, at that very early stage, it challenges you, because you've now got to sell your business to someone who sells papers or needs online traffic. And if you can't convince them, then you need to work on something in your product or something in your service that would make them go to you more for stories. So it's a really great way of getting feedback on your messaging, how you talk about yourself, what you're doing, and seeing what amongst what you offer is really piquing their interest.
That's so good, because, I think when I started my business, and we were talking about this earlier, and I was like, I know I need PR. I'm not really sure what PR is, but I know I need it, and I know I need to get there. And it's interesting what you say, because then when I started working with a PR company, they were like, so tell us all about your company. And off I went on this big ramble, and they're like, yeah, just give us the main details. And so it did really help me hone in as well on what was important. What did people want to know about? What was going to excite them? And a real kind of learning curve for me in PR was what I thought was an exciting story, because to me it was really interesting. My PR company were like, is that interesting to people, reading a newspaper or reading a magazine? And I was like, oh, maybe not so much. So what would you say makes a good story?
The first thing you have to ask yourself, and this is probably what you should have done in that situation, is genuinely, why would anyone care?
Yeah.
If you can't answer why would anyone care, you're not going to get this covered by a publication. The big thing with all PR and just kind of like broader communications is I always say, think of it as communications, don't think of it as PR. Think of it as, I have a story, I've got something I want to get out there, but what are the multiple different channels that I can use in order to do that? Press is one route of doing that, but it's not the be-all and end-all. We live in a world now where we can generate so much of our own content that we shouldn't be reliant on having to get a publication to talk about us. So there's a lot of stuff that you can kind of do yourselves. But if you think strategically, what you need to do is you establish your end goal. So with PR, what do I want to achieve? Do I want to get more customers? Do I just want to raise general awareness? Do I want to look at further investment? Do I want to make sure that when someone Googles me, this really, really sexy article about my business comes up and I look like I know what I know, which is a lot? And that's where you kind of start with that. Then you figure out, well, who is that audience? So first of all, if you're running a business, you should know who your customer is or your customers, what that market looks like. But then start to really understand them and understand what their media habits are. So most companies, you'll usually go through a phase where you spend a lot more quality time with your customers to understand them. So the big thing is if you're going to understand your customer, just add in a couple of additional questions. What do you read? Yeah. What social media do you use? What do you look at on a day-to-day basis? That will enable you to then kind of figure out the publications that you should ideally be seen in. And then you need to just be reading them. So actually read what your customers read, understand the stories that are going to resonate with what your business does, understand the stories that get the most traffic, actually understand what a story is, because a story is never just company did X. No, it's data, it's an interesting thing that you found out through what you're doing. It might be an announcement, it might be I've raised some money, it might be a really, really big hire, but you're never directly the news. It's always something that you've done or something you've revealed. And then you figure out how to pitch that story.
Which some people just go, oh my gosh, I can't pitch. I don't know where to start. So what would be your advice?
Practice makes perfect.
In front of the mirror?
Well, I mean, you should be doing it in front of the mirror to a degree, right? Because the story that you'll tell will always kind of overlap with the story that you tell more generally about your business. And that's your pitch. What you need to practice is kind of how you would talk to anyone about what you do, all that story, and get feedback. The simplest way to think about it is what is the most simple and yet effective way I can get this across to someone. So a journalist is going to like hit delete if you send them paragraph after paragraph after paragraph after paragraph telling a story. If you can't summarize your entire story in one line or a short paragraph, you're going to lose their attention. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to being attention grabbing. So practice by talking to colleagues, talking to investors if you have them, anyone in the media that you might already know, or just friends and family, and just get feedback on what that story sounds like. And then when it comes to the pitch, people think it sounds much harder than it actually is. Most publications now, most journalists, their email is available on the website or it's available on their social media because they are in competition to make sure they get the best stories for their publication.
That's such good advice because I know myself personally, I've used Twitter quite a lot to connect with journalists. And then when I have done something for them or they've done something for me, they've come to me for a quote, I followed them on Twitter, I've stayed connection with them so that next time they're looking for somebody dating related or female entrepreneur related, they think, Caroline, she got back to me quickly, I'm going to go straight to her. And then, it's that ongoing, you kind of then get called upon, which is a really great position to be in when journalists are thinking, I know just the person and it's you.
And that's a big thing as well, speed.
Yeah.
If you are slow, and slow in journalist terms is you took longer than an hour, you're off of that contact list again because they are heavily reliant on you being the most responsive person when they have a question. So the best thing to do is, if you can, and this doesn't always go the right way, but if you get a request from a journalist, just drop what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you can give a quote in 5 minutes. If it takes you longer than 5 minutes, you've got bigger problems.
Yeah. That is such good advice because I know journalists are so busy, aren't they? And they're turning around stuff quickly. And we were chatting before, and actually I'd love for you to share what you were saying to me about some journalists, maybe they have to do how many, maybe 15, 20
Yeah, so
articles?
we were specifically talking about the Mail Online, and someone had said to me, and I think this is roughly true, that the Mail Online team, a journalist there has to publish around about 20 articles a day.
Insane.
It's insane. I mean, you think back to like essay times at school. Could you think of doing more than one essay a night? And that was too much as it was. With any publication like the Mail Online or anything that's online where it's all about mass. It's just mass amounts of news going out and going out and going out all of the time. You have to basically create and package the entire story for them. The way that it works now with journalists and the speed at which they need to publish, regardless of whether it's 20 for the Mail Online or it's 5 or 6 for a tech blog, you need to give them everything in one go. They hate having to email and go, oh, have you got any images to go with that? Or could you answer this question and this question and this question because you missed out some key detail in the first thing that you sent us? Do it all in one go. So always send a press release within the body of an email. Never send it as an attachment. It is a pain. Always provide an open link press kit, whether that's Google Drive or on Dropbox, which just syncs up everything. So a journalist can just click on it and go, oh, here are all of the possible images that I could ever need in order to write this article, which goes back to the point of something like the Mail Online. If you create a story, send them the near written story with 20 images because they're going to need about 20 images.
Yeah, that's true. Very image heavy. That's such good advice because journalists are busy. They just want the information and they want it straight away. And if you can give it to them, then you're going to go much higher in their lists of, well, maybe, and if you send them a couple of lines, they're thinking, too much hard work for me. You know, there's other interesting stories out there. Because how many, articles do you think journalists, press releases are getting each day? I mean, they must be getting hundreds.
Oh, it's insane. So I previously worked with a journalist who came in-house at an agency for a while and then went back into the journalist world. And he told me that when he left his position, which was at the Telegraph, so this is national, it's daily, he had 60,000 unread emails in his inbox. And that's because for a journalist, the filtering system begins with your email subject. So if you can't provide a subject header that gets their attention, they're not going to read the email. The filtering system starts right there. Then it comes down to when they open the email, what's the first couple of lines you say to them? So journalists themselves, they have a bit of a debate about whether, you should actually include, hi, how are you? Some people like the fact that you're polite. Other people would just much rather you get straight to the, I have this, you can have this. This is a story, it's yours. Because they just need to get through so much of that stuff and quite early in the day as well to make sure that they're covering the right things throughout the day.
So in some ways you shouldn't be offended as well if yours doesn't get picked up. If you've spent a while and you think I've got this great story and you've really put your heart and soul into it, if it doesn't get picked up, it is that it's tough competition out there.
Yeah.
And I did an exercise when I did some PR training myself, and we went through some publications, and she told us, look at where you could actually get in. Go and have a look at how many slots in a magazine or a newspaper where there's an actual story that you could fit. And it's actually often quite a small amount, isn't it? Because they have the same columns, for example, every week, and there might only be 2 spaces where you could fit. And so the competition for those spaces is huge. So don't take it to heart too much. I mean, if it hasn't got picked up, and you'll have experience from this when you're sending out releases and things for clients, do you kind of tweak it and try again, or do you try a different angle?
So the one thing that I always say to clients is you can tell quite quickly when a story's not going to work. So you can put a lot of steam behind it and think this is the right thing, but you can't be beholden to what will happen on a daily basis. So I've had examples in the past where I've had a client that was, where I always say 95% certain they were going to be featured in the business section of the Telegraph, and they weren't, because the day before Kate had George. Yeah, there was a royal birth, and as much as that sounds weird, it's the business section. Well, the news suddenly shifted to how did the business community react to the birth of the prince? And you get dropped. It happens, and you have to take every yes from a journalist with a pinch of salt, because it's never a 100% guarantee. Now, the best ones out there, if you build a relationship with them, which you do the minute they say that they're going to write something for you, you just have to handle it in the right way. So always be polite, always be respectful, never, ever, ever muck them about or get angry, because they will stop. They will just not contact you again. Work with them, because some stories that we think are very, very they have to be right now, they don't. They can be 3 or 4 weeks or a couple of months down the line, especially if it's magazines that have much bigger features. They're working on things ages in advance. So timing, both planning on your side and just generally stuff that's out of your control, always has to be on the mind.
Definitely. I know I had some tips that I'd given for a newspaper, and the journalist was really honest. She was like, I'm waiting for a slow day. And I was like, I'm not going to take offence, because I totally get what she means. She's waiting because it's a very general, generic article. It could go in any day. So she was just waiting. And then when they had a slow news day, there it was.
There you are.
But it didn't matter to me. It was still in there.
Exactly. And that's what you have to bear in mind. So, if I look back on the month of June that we've had now, we've not even got to the end of it yet. But, we had the big general election. Everyone that I spoke to who said, so I've got a news story going out. I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't. Hit pause. That can wait till July. There is no point trying to do anything when there is a big moment happening and it's something that's in the calendar. You can prepare for that. Now, other things that have sadly happened in the following weeks that are completely out of anyone's control, and they're horrific. You just have to kind of wait and be patient. Let them go by. They'll be around for a few weeks, if not months yet, but the amount of coverage they get will drop down. Yeah. And then suddenly, a journalist that is relevant to you becomes relevant again, and they're looking for new things.
That's great advice. And you mentioned earlier, Cathy, you said that there are some things that you can do if you can't get a PR company on board yet, or perhaps you don't want to do that. What are the things that you could be doing? We've talked a little bit about pitching yourself. What else could you be doing to maybe spread your word, let everyone know that you're here?
Well, social media. That's the big one. Now, it takes a while for you to grow a following, but you have to start making the investment, because social media is directly where all of the media is now shown. It's also, as you said, right, you follow journalists now on Twitter that you've met. Follow journalists that you want to talk to, that you are going to meet. Use that to your advantage to respond to things that they publish themselves. Use social media to write, content marketing pieces. Anyone can be a thought leader these days. That's the buzzword, right? So talk about what your company's doing. Publish a blog that's more about you as a business, that may not be the most newsworthy thing in the world, but it shows you're going on a journey and you're inviting a community to be a part of that. You've got your supporters, you've got people that will share that and get the word out further. Don't be afraid to use video. Don't be afraid to have a podcast. Don't be afraid to host an event and, actually talk about something that's relevant to your business. I think the big thing that I'm seeing at the moment is that any kind of communications that you do, the successful drivers at the moment are things that are authentic. So 100% in line with your brand, your values, and what you're trying to achieve. And if you can build a community and a sense of kind of growth around that stuff that does get picked up. All PR takes investment. It always takes investment and momentum. So whether you're doing it yourself or you're doing it with an agency or you bring someone else in to do it, you're never immediately going to be in the Times. You might be lucky. You might not ever get the front cover of Vogue. That's significantly unlikely. But it's all about momentum, and you've got to consistently be in touch with journalists in order for them to kind of recognise your milestones, and then you're there. You're in their brain. They'll come back to you at some point.
That's so true. It's something that we're working on all the time. It never goes away. We don't just say, right, this month we're focusing on PR. It's a constant kind of trickle. And as you say, adapting to what's going on in the world. And, for us in Mutual Attraction, it's dating. There might be a dating show on TV that suddenly we've got a comment on. And so it's looking, isn't it, and recognising and just being really, switched on and seeing and making full opportunities of everything that's happening. Because there are so many opportunities when you start really looking and thinking about it. And what I'd love to ask you is, because I know there's some women out there who are probably thinking, oh, I might like to engage, the services of a PR company. What could they expect? Now, I know each PR company is different, but what would happen with you, for example, if someone came to you and said, Cathy, help me, work with me?
So I'm building a model that's different to your standard PR agency. So most agencies, and this is not all of them, they have a very hierarchical structure. So you would go in and as a new business, you would be given to a specific account director or account lead from a team division within that agency. So someone that's very specific in your area, which is great because they've got a load of contacts, they've got a load of experience that they can use with you. And then the way they work, they'll have account director, they'll have an account manager, they'll have an account executive, all the way down to interns. Basically, they can all effectively do the same thing, but to varying degrees of success and expertise. Now, they'll work with you in a kind of a more fixed way. So PR people typically are ridiculously well organised. They will be very readily available for a regular meeting. They'll keep track of everything that they're doing, but they will to a degree have a bit of a cookie cutter approach. And that cookie cutter approach will come down to your budget. So if you've got a minimal budget, it means that there's not going to be as much leeway to be creative, because they're just going to kind of know with what they can do at that point in time with the money that you've got available. If you have a much larger budget, the budget we all dream of, then that means you can be a hell of a lot more creative with what you're going to get done. Now, for me, I'm kind of messing around with that relationship. So for startup businesses, so if you're a small business and you haven't raised a huge amount of capital yet, but you are looking at how to best use PR and comms, I offer startup service packages. So these aren't designed for me to come in and actually pitch your business to press, which sounds ironic, but it's actually for me to come in and work with your team to teach you how to do it. And the reasoning behind that is that I've spent years working with startup founders and in an agency and out of an agency, and I've seen the things that just don't work. The problem that you have is for startups, agencies are expensive. For agencies, startups don't pay enough money.
Yeah.
So you have an agency that cut corners for a client that has high expectations against a low fee for the agency, and it just breaks down the whole way along. So the reasoning for having startup services is if you can learn how to do the press office function of that agency yourself, you retain your relationships, you have a better understanding of comms moving forward, and you can actually give your team new skills. So you're investing in your team for the future. Then when you raise your Series A or your Series B, or you're making a lot of money in revenue, that's when you can think about having an agency who can come in and be your creative partner.
That is such good advice, because I think so many women would actually quite enjoy the challenge as well of doing their own PR and managing it. And I can speak from experience that it is just such a worthwhile skill to have. I mean, you can utilise it in all aspects of your business. So I think it's fantastic that you're doing that and making it more achievable, more affordable, and more of a better option, I think, for so many small businesses out there who are still in that early stage and maybe don't have lots of money that we all wish we had, but we don't have yet.
Yes.
But we'll have it before long, I'm sure. Oh, Cathy, that's amazing. Do you have any kind of final words of wisdom for women out there?
Don't get disheartened. I think the one thing that women have working for them a lot, if you're a woman in business, is that the press generally are hungry for amazing women to talk about what they're doing and the other more personal things that come with trying to start a business as a woman. And that's not to say that you have to be beholden to using that in order to get coverage, but you can use that to help you along the way. So I would say don't be afraid to shout about what you're doing. When you talk to journalists, for instance, and you're flagging yourself as a spokesperson, this is going to sound really weird, but send them a picture of you.
Yeah.
Because the big thing is diversity. And if you can show what kind of woman you look like, it's a bad thing to say, but it's the way things go right now. Use it, because it's being given to us.
Yeah.
So, provide a profile, show that you're a spokesperson. You can talk about multiple different things and why you're the expert that they should talk to, and then just be ready to respond to them as quickly as possible when they come knocking.
Cathy, you're a superstar, and we wish you all the best in your new business. I'm sure it's going to be massive, and we can't wait to follow you and see how things develop.
Thank you.
Thank you.